Morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the shadow. The shadow knows, right? Um, Before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to settle in and get present. And so take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and feel that oxygen coursing into your lungs, moving into your bloodstream, and enlivening all your cells and your organs and reinvigorating you. And as you exhale, just exhale any tension, any stress. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose. And this time, just imagine sparkling white light and see it coursing into every molecule of your being, reaching throughout every corner and nook and cranny in your body and beyond, and connecting you into the universe. And now let's just gently take our palms and press them together, and softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the tickling in your fingers, feel the tickling in your palms, and how delicious that is. Allow it to be something that brings you present here right now. And let's talk. Let's talk about the shadow. There's so much going on in the world that we can consider to be the shadow. You know, the darkness that is now being brought to light, and that is the path to healing and wholeness, is to expose our shadow side, to recognize our shadow side, and to be present to it with light. And that transforms the shadow. So, what we're seeing in our world right now is so much disruption and upheaval and darkness, real darkness, from racial inequities to and murder and incredible discrimination on all levels, uh, prejudices, racial prejudices, gender prejudices, um, sexual prejudice, on and religious prejudice, on and on and on. We're seeing corruption in systems, we're seeing corruption in government, we're seeing all kinds of things that really, really could be profoundly disheartening. And where this conversation comes from is a conversation that I was part of yesterday with a friend who has been a follower of a certain um, spiritual practice. And the leader, stories have come to light about the leader of that movement, of that practice, that have been very, very, very disenchanting and disturbing and upsetting. Excuse me, my voice. Sorry about that. Okay, so first of all, welcome. I'm really glad to have you here this morning. I so appreciate it, and I think this is a really important conversation for us to engage in collectively, because there is so much going on right now in the world that calls for our attention. And so, uh, what happened with this, for this person, this friend that was talking about the the exposing of certain behaviors and practices from this spiritual leader, was a really, really deep disenchantment. And we talked about disenchantment recently. Uh, Disenchantment, not just as disappointment, but disenchantment as coming awake from a spell, you know, really sort of moving into a truer experience of what is real and what is happening, and not being held under the spell of a projected image or a projected belief. And So that goes two ways, because there are people who project a certain image, but they're not really consistent or with that image. And then there are the people, us, who project our beliefs or our expectations and believe that that's what's real. And certainly in the realm of spirituality, the expectation. Good morning, Natalie. So oh, I don't think it's morning for you, right? Well, good day, Natalie. I'm really glad to have you here. Welcome. So we're talking. Good morning, Dido. Great to have you here. We're talking about um, the shadow, and how it can be truly overwhelming, and how do we interact with it in a way that actually forwards the light. So I was talking about this spiritual leader who is now surrounded by scandal. Yes, I thought so, Natalie. Good night. Good evening to you. Good night. Um, anyway, this person who was surrounded by scandal, and how the emergence of this scandal, even though this person is no longer living, has impacted all the people that were following the discipline. And some people are burning the books and rejecting the teachings, and on and on and on. And I think we are called now to a level of discernment that perhaps we've never before been called. If we look at many, many powerful people who have done lots of good, we also see that there are some really dark scandals for a number of them. And just coming to mind, I think about the dark side of Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi um, or JFK or uh, Bill Clinton, and I'm talking about powerful people who have a light and a dark side, and without getting into politics, obviously. I mean, you may think that um, these people are pure darkness. I don't know, but I'm just talking about how I've heard so many instances of scandal around powerful people, and I don't think that the light and the dark dichotomy is unique to powerful people. I think that we just hear more about it uh, because of their power, and it brings up the conversation about how do we discern? Do we say that because this person was corrupt or did some horrible things? And I'm not saying to excuse the horrible things by any means, by the way. I'm just saying, can we distinguish and can we discern the the good from the bad? Can we make our own distinctions about receiving value? Can we pull the value from the confusion of light and dark, good and bad, to distill the value? Because right now, in this crazy time where there's so much mixed messaging and craziness going on, I think that we are really called to find a way to distill and distinguish the good from the bad, the benefit from the detriment, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not easy. However, I think it's really important that we not throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, because um, going back to this spiritual leader, there was much wisdom that he was able to share. And then he didn't live into the highest value, perhaps. And so I'm wondering, do we just say because he was not able to live up to the wisdom of the teaching, was the teaching attached to him, or was he a vehicle for the message, and an imperfect vehicle at that? I'm wondering, I really love your input on this, because I imagine that a number of us have experienced a deep disenchantment over different leaders, whether they be teachers we've had, or political figures, or other people that are sharing technology or information or teachings, wisdom. So it's a thorny topic, and it also brings us back around to be looking at our own shadow and our own humanity. And oftentimes our shadow self is a key to the deepest transformation. So when we recognize, for instance, maybe we have issues with anger. I used to be very, very, very angry. And digging deeply into that anger and finding and healing the source of it was a profound evolutionary step and path for me. And I am guessing that that's the case for many others who, in digging into our hurt, our guilt, our shame, our anger, our darkness, that we have, there's a gift there. There's a gift there to be able to bring light to that, bring awareness to that, bring compassion to that. And through that light, awareness, and compassion, bring healing and integration and evolution. And I'm wondering if you guys, any of you, I imagine you probably have experienced a similar passage where by facing your darkness, you were able to heal. Pretending that it's not there does not make it go away, it makes it go deeper. I know that there was a lot of, in my life, I had quite a lot of shame for ways that I had responded to things in my life, and some things that I had done. And because I never really found a way to integrate those parts of myself, to forgive those parts of myself, I was at the effect of them. It kept me stuck in a particular place in my life where I was not fully integrated. I wasn't accepting myself. I wasn't forgiving myself. And it's very uncomfortable to look at our shadow. It's very uncomfortable to face the things that we feel shameful about, and to bring compassionate acceptance to that, and forgiveness to that. However, without that, without truly embracing and facing that shadow, and moving beyond the judgment that creates the guilt and the shame, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to reach our fullest capacity of expression and transformation. So any feedback on this, guys, as you're hearing this? Are there places in your heart where you've not yet had the willingness or ability or courage, or any combination of all of those things, to face that darkness in yourself? See, I really believe that given the right circumstances, any of us is capable of anything. And I'm not saying that we are victims of circumstance. I'm saying that we are malleable and mutable and human. And we often fall sway to our reactivity and to the triggers that we've been subject to, programmed into, through circumstance, or that we've adopted through circumstances, the way that the experiences of our lives, the way we've integrated things, creates this matrix of triggers and beliefs and reactions and emotions. And with just the right stimulus, I think that no matter how good we imagine ourselves to be, we could potentially be moved into a response or a behavior that we would never, ever, ever imagine when we're coming from our resourcefulness and presence. So with this notion in mind, I know I've spoken before about restorative justice, where victims confront or engage with their perpetrators, and perpetrators are in conversation with the victims of what they did, and through that face-to-face communication, there's a possibility for recognizing the humanity in one another and forgiving one another. And I've spoken about forgiveness before as something that's really not as much for the other person as it is for ourselves, because carrying the burden of rage or vengeance or even victimhood is self-destructive. But in this forgiveness, where people are able to connect with the person that they imagine to be the most terrible villain, to be able to find the humanity in that person, and to be able to find forgiveness in oneself, is profoundly freeing. And the reason I'm talking about this is because in facing our own shadow, it is like facing that perpetrator. It is like facing the source of our pain and misery. And so to be able to bring forgiveness to ourselves for our shadow behavior, our shadow selves, our shadow acts, to be able to look at it in the light and recognize it, I believe, has transformative power. And the shadow, ultimately, when brought to light, will wilt. It will become a part of the greater light, and it can become a profound advisor. So as we dance with our shadow and recognize that part of ourselves, there are expressions of the dark energy, if we want to call it that, or what we're calling our shadow side. It's all judgment, right? But there are aspects of that darkness that, when harnessed, really bring profound power and vitality and energy to life as a whole. If you think of the yin yang symbol, it's light and dark. And I imagine it as a three-dimensional, like a holographic uh, sphere that is spinning all the time, and it needs the dynamism of the lightness and the darkness in order to create the motion and the energy of life. And so when we think of light and dark, we often think of death and birth, as if death is dark. Um, we create it as dark. Well, in fact, death is an essential part of life, on all different levels. It's a cycle of regeneration and recreation. And we also are very aware of the notion that destruction precedes creation. And that is this whole light and dark, uh, life and death cycle. And so, what we're seeing now is almost, in many ways, culturally, what we're seeing is the death of many structures, the death of many paradigms that have been long lived and have now come to their cycle of decay. And we are now making room, as these systems are showing their flaws and their weaknesses. We are coming more aware of ways that we can generate something anew and something that is more life affirming. So I'm wondering if you guys have any input at all about this light and dark cycle of being, and the way that it plays out in our individual lives and in the world. I think in so many ways, because because of COVID, a lot of us are having the opportunity to be exploring parts of ourselves that we weren't previously aware of. And I know a lot of people are doing very, very deep soul searching and seeing aspects of themselves that perhaps they didn't have the time or attention to recognize previously. And we get to deal with these parts of ourselves. We get to look at how we can integrate them, how we can become whole. Because by cutting out the dark aspect, by not recognizing it, by denying it, we are condemning ourselves to remain at the effect of them, to remain incomplete. We need all aspects again, for the contrast, for the dynamism, for the energy of life. And it's only our judgment that makes the darkness bad and evil. And I'm not saying that we need to that all behaviors are acceptable. They're not. Please don't misconstrue that. I'm just saying that a lot of us have what we consider our dark side, not through dark action necessarily, but through thoughts that are dark. And the thing is that as we recognize those thoughts, as we bring them conscious, what we get then to do is to make conscious and deliberate choice as to who we are and how we choose to express in the world. So by pretending that that darkness isn't there, we don't have a chance to heal it. And we don't have to act on it either. And maybe that's a really big and important distinction for us to be talking about when we're talking about embracing the darkness. It doesn't mean to go and act on these impulses necessarily, but to find a way to communicate with and integrate the part of oneself from which that darkness emerges. So I think that without any further comments from you guys, I'm pretty complete for today about the darkness. Dido. Dido says, it sounds like mindfulness, awareness with compassion is key in looking at the shadow aspects of life. I think it is. I think it is. And I think, and I really appreciate your reflection there, Dido, because in recognizing, if we recognize the things in our world right now that we're seeing as darkness and evil, and we push it away rather than really looking at it and at what is at the heart of it, what is compelling it, what is provoking it, with compassion and awareness, then we don't have a chance at changing it. And denial of it, or judgment of it, or resistance to its existence perpetuates it. And so I believe that we're called upon now more than ever to be open eyed, to be compassionate, to be discerning, to be present in recognizing what's going on in the world and in looking for ways to transform it into, once again, something that is more life affirming for everyone on the planet. So thank you for that, Dido. Much appreciated. And thank you to all of you who are listening and engaging in these um, mind experiments from day to day, these thought adventures. I think it's important that we be awake and aware, and that we elevate our awareness and our consciousness in this time is more important for the planet than ever, because we're in a time of such profound possibility, but it's also a precarious time, and we get to continually choose consciously and deliberately the light. Mira says, yep. I'm sorry. Dido says, thank you, Mira. A lot to think about. It is. It is a lot to think about. And I think it's really important, because this is, we're trying to, so many of us are on this path of awakening and trying to be the light for the world. And when we see parts of ourselves that don't conform to our imagining of what that light looks like, we often blame ourselves and judge ourselves, and even cultivate self-hatred around those things. And the truth is that that is not the way that we're going to transcend those aspects of ourselves. We get to look at them face on compassionately with presence, to bring about the healing and the integration of those parts, and recognize that even the darkest parts of us have a place that, given the right circumstances, those parts are really the most important parts to have, from a very specific, perhaps, and very unusual and maybe never occurring possible circumstance. But there are times when that trait, whatever it is, would be the thing that would best serve our commitment to life and light. So that said, this is the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin, and I'm here every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And we're broadcasting live from the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. I invite you to join the Facebook group and enjoy the other extraordinary programming. And hopefully, you will come back and join me again tomorrow. Lots and lots of love and lots of compassion.